Hello, everyone, and welcome to What's Your Game, episode 65. The aim of What's Your Game is to introduce new games and gaming supporting projects to an audience of gamers within the Web3 space. We've been running for 65 episodes at this point, so I think it's covered about 70 weeks, considering I've had a couple of weeks off to treat myself at Christmas. And we've gone for over 120 games at this point, have come up and shared what they are building. It has been extremely enjoyable talking to all these games that we've gone through, and I keep forgetting that it's well over a year since I started. I did have a look back at some of the games previously, and it's been brutal. I'm not going to lie. The bear market has took its toll on the list. But if you are wanting to keep up to date with all the games we've had on as a guest, I will be pinning to the space a Twitter list which has the majority of the projects on there. Some of them didn't even make it to the list before they've disappeared, but the majority are there now. I am the host for the hour, Gaspode. I decided to call myself the creative genius behind What's Your Game because I couldn't think of. I found it sounded a bit too lofty, so genius sounded a bit more humble. And I try and bring new games via all sorts of platforms across Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, and Spotify. And I will be pinning stuff as we go. So make sure to keep an eye up on the top to see anything that's interesting there. I'll also be reading the comments. So in the bottom right hand corner, you've got a speech bubble. So if you have any questions, throw your comments and questions in there, and we'll look at those as we go through. Or it's a free stage. So if you've got a question for the team today, just pop your hand up and I'll bring it up and you can ask your question directly. Before we jump to the new game tonight, a quick update from some of the previous projects that we've had on. We are seeing a lot, and this is just a general one, we're seeing a lot of the projects posting about the Games Awards, which are coming up. So make sure you're going in there and voting for your favorite games and creators for Gam3.gg. I'm really excited to see the amount of people that are being voted for and the amount of games on there. Been lucky enough to be picked as a judge, and I have finished sending in my votes. It is very difficult this year. I wasn't a judge last year, but I did keep up to date with all the categories, and this year it was a lot harder to pick, and every category was absolutely stacked with great games. So definitely go and check that out. We have been seeing a lot of updates coming out recently from everyone trying to push out new bits of content and as well as updates to the game. So that has been very enjoyable to see. And specific updates on some of the games that we've had up previously. We've seen a bit more coming out from Star Heroes. Star Heroes is kind of like a dogfighting spaceship game that you can play. It's kind of team deathmatch, but you're in a spaceship. I got to play it last year when I was in London, got to play it live. I was very bad, but everyone else there was worse. Someone hadn't played a computer game with a keyboard, so I did manage to get one kill with that one. In terms of a few other ones, I keep mentioning this one, but they're just doing quite a lot with their leaderboards quite often. So we've got Cyber Titans. It is an auto battler playable on Elixir. I've played a little bit. I wasn't very good. One of my key kind of interest in that one in terms of the way they've set it up is it's a round robin auto battler. So there's 4 people and you keep going between each person fighting one-on-one, slowly taking down your overall game health until someone's a winner. And I quite like that. It's keeping it fresh because you can't just counter one person's build. And then finally, Rumble Arcade, who I seem to bring up all the time. One of my favorite games right now. Have been handing out some more of their Flamies, which is their studio NFTs, as well as other prizes on their continuous leaderboard for Rumble Arcade. But I'll be pinning that list to the top. So if you want to keep up to date with all of those games, make sure to follow that. But now we will head over to today's project. And we've got Animosita joining us. So who are you and what's your game?
Yeah, thanks so much, Gaspode. Pleasure to join. You can just call me Annie, as our audience knows. It can be a challenge, a mouthful pronouncing some of the names for your guests. So Annie is just fine. I am the CEO of EthLizards, and we are one of, I would say, the OG communities in Web3 gaming, by pretty much any measure. Our studio for quite a long time was really focused on investing and helping other projects build games effectively. And we actually began as an early stage investment DAO. Earlier this year, we made the decision as an organization to add a couple of additional elements to our DAO, and one of these is an actual development studio. And so, what we've begun building out across Web3 gaming is a series of interconnected mini games, metagames, and gaming experiences with literally the top tier studios in Web3. And our first product, really pleased to announce that we launched almost exactly 2 weeks ago now, and this is a platform known as Battle in the Beyond. So this is a mini game attached to Illuvium. We are the first official partner with third-party title attached to the Illuvium ecosystem, and it has been incredibly well received. So I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about what the game structure is over the course of today. But at its core, it's turning the PFP Illuvitar's unboxing experience into a multiplayer experience from what was originally single player. So keen to share some of the details. I'm sure our EthLizard account will get some tweets pinned that people can actually watch some gameplay as we discuss it today.
Now, I am very excited to hear more. I do have a lizard myself, and I can see Lem's in the audience, and he is totally to blame. Off the back gamified, and his lizard always being there, I ended up picking up one myself. But before we jump into the game itself, just a couple of the bits you touched on might be of interest for some people who I've seen in the audience who maybe haven't been in the space quite as long. You have kind of, like you mentioned, been in the space with lizards for a long time. How have you seen the space changing kind of from the start to where we are now?
It's a great question. So actually, in the intro today, I was thinking about this. You mentioned the challenge going through and putting in your nominations for the award show this year with Web3 Gaming Studios. I had a chance. I was one of the judges for the event that IC hosted in Miami this year. It was back in January, and it was a challenge, but not a challenge in the same way that you had. It was a challenge for us to find enough games that actually had gameplay out. We were doing the voting in November and December of last year, and for a number of the categories, it was a struggle. We were really just looking at some that had, solid looking trailers to fill some of those slots for a few of the categories. So I would say really in 2021 and 2 were the years of funding for Web3 gaming. 2023 is the year of building, culminating across the sector. And what we're going to start seeing, we've already seen a little bit the tail end of this this calendar year, but 2024 games are launching, and I mean real games, not the gamified staking protocols that we saw in the last few years, but actual games that people want to play all on their own, just because they're fun. And this for us has been, I think, the most exciting part of 2023. It doesn't look like there's a lot happening from the outside world. If you're looking for like finished release titles, you're not seeing those. But for communities like EthLizards and your audience members that are here, you're absolutely able to go see and play a lot of these early stage, early access, beta, alpha gameplay, that you can really, really see the difference in what a couple of years of build time has allowed these studios to bring out. And that's for sure the biggest change, is that we see a whole host of studios that are just on the precipice of launching. And 2024, while I don't think it will be the year that Web3 gaming goes mainstream in like general consciousness, it will be the year that we actually get the games that will lead the mainstream adoption over 2025 and 2026.
100% agree. I think the amount of games that are starting to come out now, whether it's open access to everyone or just some of the sneak peeks of private play tests we've been seeing, are real games, and they're ones that will be able to get the attention of people who maybe don't have as much interest in the NFT or the ownership side, that they're just interested in kind of jumping on and shooting stuff. And I think we're seeing a lot of games that are going to definitely tickle that itch for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
Yeah, and
okay.
you mentioned that, guess, but there's I think also it's exciting because we're no longer limited to just a couple of genres, right? If you look at the games that have had good gameplay out for the last couple of years, you basically had a handful of FPS variants, and then a few other sort of casual games, and that was about it, honestly. I mean, there were a few other things here and there, some decent mobile games, but now you look across the genre of of different games of choice. It's unlikely that any serious gamer is not going to be able to find something that appeals to them directly, and so I think this is the other cool part, getting to see the entire industry mature. Is virtually every single genre of games you might want has somebody who's got something good coming out soon.
Definitely. And just to keep vague, kind of wider picture before we do jump into the game itself, what was it that made the Lizards decide to move kind of from the sidelines and more into the trenches?
Yeah, 100%. The goal was, as a community, we've always been very supportive of these top tier studios. What we recognized is, because of our position being integrated with so many of these top builders, we said, it doesn't make sense for us just to be passively supporting them with investment activities and playing and participating in the games. We have enough firepower, enough brain power in the community. We've got a lot of builders that are in EthLizards. So many folks are either founders or they're developers or they're mods or community managers across other studios. We said, it makes sense for us to begin turning some of our knowledge to actually help these studios build, because we talk all the time about infrastructure that's needed, and most people think about blockchains and they think about wallet integration and they think about these other core tech pieces, and for sure those are needed, right? I don't want to downplay the importance there for good onboarding experiences for gamers, but also many of the best games that we see in the world today, not Web3 but in Web2, they evolved from mod communities, and they evolved from add-ons and expansions and extensions, where the player base actually knew how to make the game better. And we've seen this time and time again in EthLizards, is our community just knows what many of these studios are lacking when it comes to either Web3 or Web2 knowledge. And so we said it just makes sense for us to put some of that to use. And instead of just advising, why don't we get in there and actually start building ourselves? And because we're able to be connected to so many good studios, this allows us to spin up some pretty quick builds of again, mini games, or kind of mods or enhancements to the gameplay or to the functionality that the primary Web3 gaming studios are not going to be able to put resources towards. But if we can find some areas where we can set up a model that's mutually supportive for them and for us, in terms of the revenue sharing structures, in terms of community sharing, this addresses one of the biggest challenges that they have, which is which is UA and retention, where you're able to really see many other games and gamers find your community, right? If we have 10 different studios that EthLizards has mini games connected to, if you decide you're done playing over here in a an RPG game, you want to move over to a MOBA, well, you're probably going to look as close to home as possible to start, and you're going to jump to one of the studios that we're already partnered with. And if we're very diligent in choosing which of these studios we're going to build with, this allows us to ensure that we have good experiences for our community. And then also folks that may not be EthLizards yet, maybe you're just Lizard curious, which is awesome. But you can follow us and join right in as we're playing in these various tournaments and gameplay experiences. We've got a lot of access to early stage builds for these partnered studios, and we just think being actually there in the trenches and building alongside of the studios is a better value proposition. And then our community has a chance to really see and engage at a much more detailed level than if we were just helping to fund studios and just talking about what they were building.
I love Lizard Curious. as a saying. That is brilliant. But no, even from the time I spend in Discord, you can see that, like you say, there are those people who are there willing to help and wanting to get more involved. So as a move, it makes sense completely. And then for those in the audience, we have had a few bits pinned to the top. One of them is a trailer for Battle in the Beyond, in which Annie is shamed for having 2 wins and 10 losses. I don't know if it's Briar in the trailer, but it's the first thing I spotted. Can you just explain the kind of core loop to people that maybe haven't had a look at it before?
Sure. So yeah, it was not a good showing for sure in that trailer. Maybe I'll claim it was on testnet, although I'm not sure if that's the case. So Battle in the Beyond is a take on the unboxing battle experience that you see oftentimes in Web 2 with various loot crates. And so the probably most common example is Counter-Strike. If for anyone that's not familiar, Counter-Strike is an FPS game, and you have the option of buying these crates that will have different types of weapons in them. So you'll have a gun, or a dagger, or whatever it might be. And in the Counter-Strike community, over the last, it's been about 6 years or so that this has emerged. There's an enormous number of players that take these boxes, and they'll open them up against each other, and they will either they'll wager money on them, or they'll come in and sell their assets back and forth across the player base as they're opening up these crates. But they're doing so in a very gamified way. And so in Counter Strike, each of the boxes just has one single asset in it. So you get like one gun, and some of them have incredibly rare skins. Some of them are more more basic. But as you play, they've gamified that experience as you open more and more crates, and you're really there in the middle of this skin economy with these cosmetics. We've taken the same approach now to Web3, and with Illuvium, for those that are maybe following the trailers, they have these objects called discs. So it's essentially a crate or a box that has two different Illuvatars in it, and Illuvatars are like the creatures in the Illuvium ecosystem. So think of them like Pokemon, if you're not familiar. So it's got two different creatures and three different accessories. And in Illuvium, in the Illuvium Beyond game, you're going to take these creatures, these Illuvatars, and you're going to bond accessories to them. So maybe it's a cool pair of sunglasses, or it's a fedora hat, or some blinged out gold chains. You're gonna bond these to an Illuvatar, and you can use that character as your profile picture in game. You can never take any other asset in as your PFP as you're playing in the Illuvium ecosystem. And so we expect most players, when they play, they're going to want to have a customized Illuvatar that really speaks to who they are as a person. In addition, there's an entire metagame around collecting different types of Illuvatars. There are literally tens of billions of combinations, because each one of the Illuvatars has different sets of expressions and backgrounds and rarity, and there's holo types and all this. And so you've got so much variation in a single disc that we looked at it and said, you know what? What if we, instead of opening this disc by myself, I had a chance to match up, let's say against Lems here, and he and I wanted to battle, and whichever one of the two of us got the better disc, the better combination of the creatures and the accessories, we're going to be the winner for that match. And what would that look like if we did just head-to-head battles? And what you see in the video is the very simplest minimum viable product that we could build out. This was about a 4-month build for EthLizards, and we've got now I think a very high quality battling platform. The community loves it because we've turned, again, the single player experience into multiplayer. Now you can go in there and shit post against other people, and I got this amazing holo Ramfy, and it blew away your links. So it's gamified that experience in a head-to-head way. We also have two other core game modes that we're building towards. And one of those is going to be focused on tournament play, where let's say you've got a guild, or maybe you've got two different guilds. I know Gaspard, we're in Wolves Down and EthLizards, so maybe you get the Wolves versus the Lizards, and everyone comes in and plays a series of matches, so you can do tournament and team modes against each other, or in groupings. And the other one is a tactical battle mode. And so in the tactical mode, we're going to give you a lot more agency as a player. So the current version is admittedly very RNG dependent. You don't have a lot of influence on the outcome. It's more of a fun experience that you're going to be able to share with other people. When we add the tactical mode on top of it, now you're going to be choosing which of the accessories you would be bonding with your Aluvatars, and how you're going to be playing them in a more strategic approach to battling against your opponents. And so at the moment, that win-loss record is a little bit more of a vanity metric today, but in the future, this will be more fully gamified to where you have player agency. And now it's no longer going to be more random. It's going to be much, much more based on your skill set as a player, knowing the different types of Illuvatars, deciding how to strategically pair up all of these creatures and the accessories that you got in the crate against other people.
I love the mention of gamification, just to make people think I'm smart. I'm currently reading slash it's an audiobook, actionable gamification. So I'm loving that that's kind of the angle you've been taking from it. And in terms of, you mentioned how it was happening in Counter-Strike, and you've already outlined some of the differences in what you bring into Battle in the Beyond. What kind of things you saw in the kind of Counter-Strike ones and others did you bring in, and where did you see kind of information based on the communities you've already been interacting with? How did that shape kind of how the product ended up looking?
Yeah, great question. So in Counter Strike, there's a pretty heavy focus on like leaderboards and on the financial implications. And so one two elements, one that's live now and one that will be coming in the future. Firstly, is that we have leaderboards that are active, and so one like super popular element of the platform is we have what we call Liz passes. And a Liz Pass entitles you to placement on the leaderboards each season. So a season for us is in general going to be about 3 months long. And any disc that you open on the platform entitles you to access to the free leaderboard, regardless of whether you have a Liz Pass or not. But if you have a Liz Pass, you get access to the premium leaderboards. So we have two of those. There are two different types of discs that are relevant for this. And so that Liz Pass really enables you to have a shot, even if you buy just a single disc and open it afterwards with the Liz Pass. You can literally move up to the number one spot on the leaderboard, because we take the strongest single power disc that you open over the course of a season, and that's your current score on those premium leaderboards. And I'll tell you, I've had a couple people that literally they bought one or two passes, or sorry, one or two discs, and opened them, and they vaulted over people that they might have opened up 100 different discs as they were playing, and they're in the top 10 on the leaderboard. And so we're using these leaderboards as an opportunity, firstly, to get Elemental Lizards, which is going to be an upcoming collection that EthLizards has targeted at gamers, into the hands of the player base that we know is interested in really diving deep into our partner projects like Illuvium. And so this is a great way for us to onboard new people to our community in a very fun, gamified way. We're also giving some free discs out to players. If you're a player, the number one feedback that we heard from them, like, what do you want in a leaderboard, is let us open more discs. Like we love them. That's why we're out here playing in the first place. And so if you can absolutely incentivize the top players in the leaderboard, they're just going to get more discs to open after the season ends. Like, that's a huge win for them as the community. And then the last piece is, like, our community, they want to lean in a little bit to the edgy degen side of things, and so wagering on the outcomes of battles against other people in two different forms are things that we're 100% going to lean into. So one is, you want to put point zero point zero 0.01 ETH on a matchup against your friend, like, go ahead and do it. This is way more entertaining than most other ways that you can do that. You can certainly go watch a sports game and put money on it against your buddy, but like, here, even if you lose, you're still winning because you get to keep the assets that you're opening in your disc. So that's sort of the DGen level one that's unlocked when we get the ETH wagering live. The second piece though is for, I'm going to say that like the true hardcore degens and gamblers in the audience, we're going to have the option to play for pinks. And so for anyone not familiar with that term, it comes from racing, where if you race against someone, they get the pink slip to your car if you lose. We're going to have it so that if you open discs against someone else, you have the option that it's winner take all, where all of the Illuvatars and all of the accessories that you open in the battle go to the winner between the two of you. And so, not financial advice. Also, as is always the case, with any platform like this, we absolutely want everyone to make these decisions responsibly. But look, if you want to be out there with your mates and just crank open a few discs on Friday night, like go enjoy yourself. We absolutely want to be able to support that. There's a huge market for it, and something as fun as Illuvatars, where you've got absolutely incredible art. So for anyone that hasn't seen, check out the links in the videos. I mean, the artwork is second to none in Web3, and really competes with anyone in the Web2 sector as well. It's a fun way to gamify that experience for you as a player, and again, be able to do so in a much more communal experience.
You touched on kind of one of my questions that I was going to come into there in terms of the degen gambling angle to it. That there definitely feels like this could be, well, not could be, is quite pay to win. The more money I put in, the more boxes, the more likely I am to do well. But it doesn't feel like that would matter to the audience. Is that something you considered, and how has the audience kind of reacted to that?
Sure. So yeah, from a leaderboard standpoint, it is true that you're like, if the more that you pay to open more discs, you have a better chance of moving up on the leaderboard. But because of this mechanic of it's really only the top disc that you open over the course of a season, like it's not guaranteed that that's going to be the case. Like I was looking, I have not had great luck in my disc polls. So I'm somewhere in the top, I think 30 or 40 with number of discs open, but like I'm much further behind that in both of the leaderboards because I haven't had a great single disc. And so, like that said, like you really can choose how much you want to play. We firmly believe, and like we know this is true, there were over $8 million worth of discs that were purchased before our platform ever launched, right? And so people are like, they love the discs, they love the idea of being able to collect your own piece of the art, and customize them. There's an entire album collectible structure in Illuvium that you can play with. They've got their own leaderboard, so everything is fully compatible between ours and the Illuvium ecosystem. So you can, to a large degree, just kind of double up on that gameplay. We firmly believe that if you're going to be opening up discs anyways because you like them and that's fun, like why not come and just play in the platform? It's entirely free to play if you want, right? You don't have to pay a thing, you don't have to buy a Liz Pass, you can just play on the free leaderboard. You absolutely never have to wager against someone else if that's not your thing, but just come in and enjoy the experience. We've also got, we think, just a much better IP and branding experience that we're bringing to players too. And we'll talk about this maybe later in a bit, Gaspo, that part of our focus is cross IP building, where we've got some fantastic EthLizards, Elemental Lizard artwork that's built in now in the platform. We've got some amazing lore writers, and we're tying in our story of the lizards with the Illuvium lore and with the Illuvium world building. And so this seems maybe just interesting in its surface on the front end, but if you look at the longer term vision for EthLizards as a project, this will be just the first of a whole series of mini games and meta games that we're building out with studios. And so imagine just like the Marvel universe, where maybe you've got a series of stories that's following Doctor Strange or Thor or the Hulk. You can jump into and out of those individual stories with whichever characters you like the most. Imagine if you have that same opportunity to do so and engage with EthLizards IP, but also the Illuvium IP and the IP of top tier projects like Dimensionals and Wildcard and Parallel and Azra and a lot of these big players in Web3. Imagine if we have partnerships where you can experience their worlds while you're playing the primary game that you want to with them, and you're also participating in EthLizards as a studio. We think this is really a hidden use case of Web3 tech that literally no one in the sector is exploring today. But we, because of our partnerships with all these top tier games, have an opportunity to do so in a way that's meaningful. It's not really fun if you have a whole bunch of frankly shitty games that no one wants to play and you try and build that out. But if you can get the top studios that people do want to be playing with because they just have actual good games, now you've got something that you can't build out in Web 2, but that you can use Web3 tech for in a very, I think, game changing way, pun intended.
Loads of threads that I'm going to try and pull on there. I've wrote them down, so hopefully I won't forget them. But one I definitely did want to touch on, you touched on it slightly. There is something I'd like to ask pretty much all the guests. We're in Web3. It comes with its benefits, but it also comes with plenty of additional challenges. Why does this need to be Web3, and how does Web3 make what you guys are doing better?
Yeah, I think it has to be Web3. There's two reasons. One is from the tech standpoint. We have access to view all of the most critical assets across our partner studios technically, right? We can look on the blockchain, and yes, it's these studios are across all of the different blockchains, L1s and L2s, but fundamentally, for me to see the assets that you own in Web 2, I have to get some kind of agreement, and there's security risks, and there's IP and ownership problems. If I go and try and pull data from the servers of Microsoft, and Blizzard, and Ubisoft, and Riot, and all these studios, like they're not going to allow me to pull that information to build a true cross IP experience. And the second one is from an incentive and a sort of stakeholder perspective. Studios in Web 2 are much, much more focused on building walled gardens to lock down gamers into their ecosystem. Some of this may change over time in Web 3. I hope that it doesn't, but at least for the first, let's say, 5 to 10 years in this space, most of these studios are going to be focused on user acquisition via opening up the walls to their ecosystem, and they're going to want to have experiences where players can share and can come and find them from other studios, because Web3 is just by definition less sticky than Web 2, because you can immediately go liquidate all of your core assets if you want, if you're not happy with the studio. And so it incentivizes them to just build better games and make better decisions for their communities, but it also incentivizes them to allow this sort of cross IP and cross experiential activities in a way that just isn't there in Web 2. And so I think both from a tech and an incentive standpoint, Web3 is necessary for this type of vision to come to fruition.
The mention of the tech is a great one, and I think it's one of the interoperability that I kind of class as a realistic interoperability. You're not trying to do anything with the actual in-game asset itself, but the ability to be able to freely use those database without any risk to the studios itself is a great idea for interoperability that, as you're already showing, actually works. And I think it ties into kind of what you mentioned around branding and then being selective with which games you bring on. So I'll go into kind of a two-parter. One, I like the idea of the branding and bringing on games, and the fact that for the games, most of it, there's not really a risk. They don't have to give you that access. You can just see it on the blockchain. They just have to hope you're not doing anything weird with kind of what you're able to pull from the blockchain. But secondly, when you mentioned about being selective, I think cultivating that is definitely something that can help the project stand out, because we've got plenty, which is a lot about volume. Like personally, I'm quite volume in terms of games. I'm quite happy that I've done over 200 games, but maybe they're not all great. But the idea of being selective when you're trying to tie it into that brand with these lizards, I think is going to be core. How do you kind of plan on being selective? Is it kind of from the community side? Is it just quality that that you see and kind of maybe some people who are trying to build out more? Or is there something about how the game itself is built and uses the blockchain that's going to kind of have more sway over whether they're going to be brought into that kind of branding and the selective selection of games that you're mentioning?
Mm-hmm. Great question here too. So this is an area that we spent a long time evaluating, is how to make these decisions about the studios. There are so many, and there are really dozens of fantastic studios and games that are out there now. It makes it a tougher choice than it would have been a couple years ago. We're looking for just a few key elements to make a decision on which studios would we actually want to build a fully integrated experience like Battle in the Beyond, because this is not a cheap decision, right? You're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to build out a platform or an experience like this. So you don't want to build it and then have the studio go under a month and a half later, right? So we're looking at two, I would say, two core factors, and there's a tertiary one that's critical too. The first is the studio building a product that we believe can be an industry leader in their genre over the next 3 to 5 years plus? And so, meaning, like, do we believe that it will come into its own over the next 3 years, and it has a chance to be a long-term leader in in whatever the space they are, right? Doesn't matter if it's an FPS, if it's RPG, and if it's a MOBA or auto battle or whatever, but they have to have potential staying power to really capture a sizable share of the audience. And then the second piece is, do we feel like the studio embodies the same ethos and philosophy of EthLizards? And with this, we're talking about sustainability, right? Does their economics model of tokens and NFTs and governance structure, and does their ethos really fit with the studio that we want to be partnered with? Because culture matters so much, and if you end up getting into an agreement with a studio that really doesn't have the same generalized vision for the space as you do, it's just not going to work out. You're going to constantly be at odds trying to make elements work, and so those two pieces are for us non-negotiable. That they have to be literally, we believe, at a top tier studio in their genre, and that they have the same ethos. And then the third is frankly timing. And with this, we have a number of partners that we're looking at that we think check the box for both of the first two. But if they don't have gameplay that's available and they're still in their build mode, like basically we're at the position where we're getting agreements in place with them that when they hit that right time window, and it may be 6 months or it might be a year from now, that they're far enough along, we're going to re-engage the conversations. And so if you don't have at least a solid beta version of gameplay available, to where we can really make that call as a team, that we're confident in what you're building enough to go ahead and spend the resources to build something out with you, we're just going to put that on pause and kind of keep following and see how that evolves with the studio over time. And so with that in mind, the way the process worked for us is we looked at, I don't know, Lems, you can help me out. Maybe it was 50 or 60 games and studios that we're building starting about 4 months ago, and we've got them ranked into different tiers based on a host of factors. We then ran that through a lot of our advisors and other partners across the space, and that there were dozens of folks that contributed to this activity. And at the end, we landed with basically three tiers that we're keeping eyes on. We have our S tier that are definite yeses. We have our A tier that are likely yeses, but maybe the timing isn't right, or we're waiting to see exactly how that integration might work. Like, some of the projects have some pretty unique models, as I'm sure you can imagine, Gaspode. And so occasionally we may find a project that we really are bullish on. We think it's going to be a great one, but we haven't really figured out how we might be able to do some integration with them. And then we've got our B tier that are projects that we think are up and coming, but we need to see more. Either maybe their dev team, maybe the gameplay hasn't really reached the level that we need it to be at yet, or maybe their marketing hasn't started to ramp up, and so we don't know if they're going to be able to do a solid enough job at acquiring users and retaining them. So from that grouping, we're obviously reaching out to our S tier partners now, and we have a number of them that we're in discussions with about pulling together the next suite of these projects that we would begin launching over 2024.
All sounds extremely exciting, and I like the way that you're mentioning that they need to have something now, or else you're going to come back later. Because I think, not to be a Debbie Downer, but I mentioned at the start kind of the number of games that I've talked to, and I did a episode 52. I went back and looked at all the games I'd spoken to in the 52 episodes. I think it was over 100 games, and it was brutal. It would have been better if I'd actually had my mic unmuted for the solid hour that I talked, or at least had seen the messages of people telling me that my mic was muted. But there was so many games that just vanished. Like the team sound really positive. We chatted loads. They came on space, talked about what they were building, already had kind of some initial versions that they could show, and then just gone, just absolutely vanished. So I think making sure there's something already there playable, or kind of coming back in 6 months to see how it's developed, I think that's a really good way of making sure you actually get that quality.
Yeah, and that's
And
the Yeah, I agree. That's where we feel the same. Like, every like many of the EthLizards, we've lived through the past 2 years and seen the same. A lot of those projects we probably were invested in, or we participated in mints, or or whitelist spots or whatever, and it's really draining on you emotionally and mentally. And our philosophy was we didn't really tell anyone outside of our community what we were building until we had something ready to go, just because there's so much honestly crap in the space that needed to be to be weeded out. Our view was, let us show you what we mean, because everything I've explained to you sort of sounds great in theory, but like until you can visualize it, until you can see how does a cross IP build out of a storyline look, what does this mini game or mini game platform entail, it's really difficult to wrap your head around it. But once you see it, you can understand how the economics work. You can understand how it's really serving to benefit our partner studio and EthLizards and the community of the game. Like, all of those need to be in alignment. When you can see it, though, it becomes like glaringly obvious that, of course, this is an amazing use case of the tech. But until then, it's really difficult to visualize on the front end, I think.
definitely. And then there was a few bits kind of going into more the EthLizards as a whole, the new collection you mentioned, and the lore. Just before we come close to kind of the end, is there any more that you want to share around that? I don't want to go poking with questions in case I miss kind of the key points.
No, I appreciate that. It's yeah, this is the part that I think excites me the most, is many studios in Web3 that are like evolved from PFP projects. They've taken the mentality, we'll build a community, and we'll build some kind of IP and brand around that community, right? Like a couple that I think have done a good job over the past years would be groups like Azuki and Pudgy Penguins and Yuga. And I think like there's a small number of those that can be successful. Um, Many of those groups, though, are now moving to try and build gaming elements on top of their IP and their lore and their community. Right? We're going from an opposite direction. And the reason we're doing this is that we know gamers don't care about lore and IP, like actual gamers, until they care about your gameplay. And so our approach has been, we're going to build these gaming experiences that are actually just freaking fun to play. Like, I can't tell you, like I've literally sat there and just watched people battling. So we have spectator modes in Battle in the Beyond. Just watching other people come in and play, like, it sounds silly, but it's actually really fun to do on its own. Like, even if there's no IP, there's no story arc behind it, that's fun all on its own. And so what we started with is, let's build something that's fun, and then we're going to embed awesome lore, incredible artwork, a great storyline into those experiences. And as people play in an experience in a gamified way that they enjoy, they're going to have no choice but to fall in love with our community and our IP. And then you have a chance to actually give them a very compelling story over the next years, right? And they're going to want to stick around for that. That's how you can build a brand that lasts, is it from a gaming first perspective, is you have to give gamers a reason to stick around beyond the lore. Otherwise it doesn't work. And I think a lot of these studios that are trying to build games after having built a community, where oftentimes, let's be honest, the community is just focused on the value of the assets going up so that they can get out of the community. Like, that's not really a community. What you have is a bunch of mercenaries that are hoping the number is going to go up. If instead you have these gaming experiences that people enjoy together, that's how you get guilds of gamers that actually enjoy each other's company and they want to keep playing with one another. And that's how you get this enduring IP. Projects like Pokemon and Star Wars and Marvel and these brands and studios that build IP that lasts, they create experiences that people wanted to stick around for. And then, the rest of the IP and the lore, all of that falls into place afterwards. It's easy to build that if people want to be in your space. And so, from our standpoint, in the world, as you go and look in Battle and Beyond, the very first time you come in, you're confronted with what we call our Liz decks. So this is our Lizard Codex of the storyline of all of the lizards. And I mentioned it earlier, we've got two like absolutely stone cold killers as lore writers that have been working with us on this. A couple guys that one of them is an acclaimed author, sci-fi and fantasy genres. Another guy has spent 30 years in Hollywood, movies, gaming industry, and books, and they're absolutely amazing guys that have been cranking through the story arc with us. We believe that, again, people by and large are not going to care about that lore the first time they come into the platform, and that's totally okay. But we're going to keep giving you reasons to come back and explore it a little bit more, and it's all based around this super fun, irreverent, memey lizard brand that we're building out. So everyone here sees the profile pictures, the artwork, like that same fun vibe is the vibe that filters all the way through the lore of our gameplay and our experiences. And so, if you're looking to have fun in a gamified way and just find some find some lore that you can fall in love with, that's what we're going to continue building out across these studios. And that's how you get this cultivated experience where you have cross IP, where maybe your Illuvium gameplay experience then runs through EthLizards, but then it integrates in some interesting ways with with a wild card, or you come over here and that integrates with Civitas in a way that you never could have thought possible. EthLizards is a studio that's positioned to be able to actually build that out in a coherent way.
I like the idea that it's cultivating the right community rather than just, as you mentioned, mercenaries. And you already touched on that slightly in terms of the leaderboard and kind of how rewards would be going to people who've played and won the most. That it's always going to people who are invested in what's actually been built in terms of time and emotion invested, not money invested. It's a tricky word to use in this space. But no, I think that's a great way of making sure the community is actually valuable to people who join it rather than everyone just competing to hope the number goes up and get out kind of quickest. In terms of people who are lizard curious and want to keep up to date with not just Battle and Beyond, but lizards in general, where's the best place to keep up to date with what's being built, what's going on, and get more involved with EthLizards?
Yeah, so I would say two places. The first is our website, so ethlizards.io. Maybe we can get a pin up there for sure. If you come over to the EthLizards Twitter handle, you can find us there. The other one is Discord, and so anyone probably familiar with the space recognizes that Discord is sort of the de facto communication for gamers, and especially in Web3. We have a very lively Discord server. So if you're lizard curious, come in and post in the public lounge. You can ask all your questions. We'll give you all the information for what we've got built now. A lot of our partners. We've got a host of different tournaments and gameplay events. I think I feel like we're running Lems ragged. We onboarded a couple more events coordinators over the past few weeks, just because we've now got so many good games that are out there. That our community wants to be playing all of them. And so it's way more than we can actually have just one person helping to host, which is, again, an amazing transition compared to a year ago. And so now we're just focused on onboarding gamers into our community. And so come on in, drop us a line. We're happy to talk through. And if at some point you decide you want to make the transition from being lizard curious to either getting one of the Genesis or the Venture EthLizards that we've got, you can get access to the Underground Lounge. There's a whole host of information, alpha connections with other OG builders, investors, and gamers in the sector. And then eventually, if you go check out Battle in the Beyond, you'll see a little bit of a hint at this in the first lore chapter that we unveiled. But the Elemental Lizard Mint is going to be taking place next year, and it's directly tied to the activities that are taking place in Battle in the Beyond right now. And so, if you want to join, maybe you're not a big investor in Web3, you're just here for the games. That's amazing, and like we absolutely want you as part of our community. The Elemental Lizard collection is a combination of battle pass, upgradable RPG character, and access to the EthLizard Lounge, where you can come and just find gamers and play with them. Right, come play tournaments. We'll have some guild and esports types of structures that you'll be able to integrate with us and some of our partners. And we want to be onboarding not just the best community of builders and investors, but gamers in Web3.
I know for a fact that the events calendar is looking very exciting in terms of the games that are coming up soon. So if you're lizard curious, which I just love saying, make sure to jump over there. The main account is pinned at the top and it is also on stage. So if you go there, you'll be able to click on all of the links via there as well. Before we wrap up, I will just double check to see what we've got in the comments. Okay. Oh, I should have done this earlier. And I'll have a look. So we have Byremi asking, is EthLizards going to look outside the ETH IMX ecosystem for games and collabs? How challenging will it be to build IPs on different chains? That's quite a good question. I like it.
Yeah, so it's a fantastic question. 100%, we are chain agnostic in the partner studios that we're looking to build out with. So doesn't matter if you're on ETH or IMX. Obviously, in this case, Illuvium, it is IMX, and so that's where Battle in the Beyond needed to be. We'll go to whatever chain is necessary for our experiences, and effectively, what we're doing is building a combined user account, and so we'll be linking your wallets on IMX, and let's say you're going over to Solana or AVAX or wherever. You'll be able to link your wallet to those other games, and we'll just have a single user account that we're tracking your progress and participation on across all of these games together. So that's going to be the core approach that we use for all of these game studios. I would not be surprised if the next studio that we build out a solution with is not on IMX, just to be frank, based on the ones that we're in the most advanced discussions with right now.
And then I have had a look. Thanks for all the comments that people have been going. Lots of cheering on. I don't think there is any further questions kind of in the chat there. Are there any final points before I wrap us up for the evening?
Yeah, so I want to give credit to your audience here, and this is awesome. We literally, I think the last month we probably had an influx of another 20% or 30% of people to the ecosystem that finally are seeing the realization of what Web3 gaming is. I suspect that most of your audience, because I recognize a lot of the names here that are live with us today, you're the folks that have been around and have just never really lost sight of the future of Web3 gaming being the next best use case of the tech that we're going to see. And just really appreciate you all being here. And each one of you, again, would love to have you come join us in the EthLizards Underground Lounge. If you want to come find us, we look forward to seeing you there. And just hit me up, shoot us a message that you found us from this interview today, and throw out whatever questions you've got. And maybe I'll get out there and play some Battle in the Beyond with you guys.
And I would just like to say thank you for coming up and sharing everything about the game and about EthLizards. I know how busy you are, so it really means a lot that you've come and shared all of that with us today for the hour. Same for the people in the audience. So many pulls on your attention. You could have watched an hour's worth of TikTok, but you decided to spend the time with us now or listening back to the recording. So it does really mean a lot. And I hope that you found it useful and enjoyed hearing about it. And I hope you have become lizard curious. In terms of What's Your Game, we will be back on Thursday for What's Your Game Play Now, where me and a panel of gamers will be reviewing the games that we have played this week. And you'll be able to vote on whether you'll play or pass to decide whether those games are something that you are going to be picking up. I have then got a couple more videos coming out on some games I've been playing. I've got a couple more that I'm going to look into in terms of IMX, as we've just mentioned for the IMX Advocate. And then definitely just keep an eye out on that timeline. If you see any interesting games that you'd like to see on What's Your Game, share the link with me and I'll see if we can get them up to hear more about that. But for now, thanks everyone for coming, and remember to play games that you enjoy, and I'll catch you on a bit. Cheers all.